Hoot awa, Lundy, ye dinna know the Sax, and that's the reason you're unmarried in your 45th year. It's a fearful time you've been a bachelor, Major." "And what may be your age, Lieutenant Muir, if I may presume to ask so delicate a question?" "47, I no deny it, Lundy; and if I get Mabel, there'll be just a wife for every twa lustrums. But I dinna think Sergeant Dunham will be so humble minded as to dream of giving that sweet lass of his to one like the Pathfinder." "There's no dream about it, Davy. The man is as serious as a soldier about to be flogged." "Well, well, Major, we are old friends." Both ran into the Scotch, or avoided it, as they approached or drew away from their younger days in the dialogue, "and ought to know how to take and give a joke off duty. It is possible the worthy man has not understood my hints, or he never would have thought of such a thing. The difference between an officer's consort and a guide's woman is as vast as that between the antiquity of Scotland and the antiquity of America. I'm old blood too, Lundy." "Take my word for it, Davy, your antiquity would do you no good in this affair; and as for your blood, it is not older than your bones. Well, well, man, you know the Sergeant's answer, and so you perceive that my influence, on which you counted so much, can do naught for you. Let us take a glass together, Davy, for auld acquaintance' sake, and then you'll be doing well to remember the party that marches the morrow, and to forget Mabel Dunham as fast as ever you can." "Ah, Major, I have always found it easier to forget a wife than to forget a sweetheart. When a couple are fairly married, all is settled but the death, as one may say, which must finally part us all; and it seems to me awfully irreverent to disturb the departed, whereas there is no much anxiety and hope and felicity and expectation like, with the lassie, that it keeps thought alive." "That is just my idea of your situation, Davy, for I never supposed you'd expected any more felicity with either of your wives. Now, I've heard of fellows who were so stupid as to look forward to happiness with their wives, even beyond the grave. I drink to your success, or to your speedy recovery from this attack, Lieutenant, and I admonish you to be more cautious in future, as some of these violent cases may yet carry you off." "Many thanks, dear Major, and a speedy termination to an old courtship, of which I know something. This is real mountain dew, Lundy, and it warms the heart like a gleam of bonnie Scotland. As for the men you've just mentioned, they could have had but one wife apiece, for where there are several, the deeds of the women themselves may carry them different ways. I think a reasonable husband ought to be satisfied with passing his allotted time with any particular wife in this world, and not to go about moping for things unattainable. I'm infinitely obliged to you, Major Duncan, for this and all your other acts of friendship, and if you could but add another, I should think you had not altogether forgotten the playfellow of your boyhood." "Well, Davy, if the request be reasonable, and such as a superior ought to grant, out with it, man." "If you could only contrive a little service for me, down among the Thousand Isles, for a fortnight or so, I think this matter might be settled to the satisfaction of all parties. Just remember, Lundy, the lassie is the only marriageable white female on this frontier." "There is always duty for one in your line at a post, however small; but this below can be done by the Sergeant as well as by the Quartermaster General, and better too." "But not better than by a regimental officer. There is great waste in common among the orderlies." "I'll think of it, Muir," said the Major, laughing, "and you shall have my answer in the morning. Here will be a fine occasion, man, the morrow, to show yourself off before the lady. You are our expert with the rifle, and prizes are to be won. Make up your mind to display your skill, and who knows what may yet happen before the Scud sails?" "I'm thinking most of the young men will try their hands in this sport, Major." "That they will, and some of the old ones too, if you appear. To keep you in countenance, I'll try a shot or two myself, Davy, and you know I have some name that way." "It might indeed do good. The female heart, Major Duncan, is susceptible in many different modes, and sometimes in a way that the rules of philosophy might reject. Some require a suitor to sit down before them, as it might be, in a regular siege, and only capitulate when the place can hold out no longer. Others, again, like to be carried by storm, while there are hussies who can only be caught by leading them into an ambush. The first is the most creditable and officer-like process, perhaps, but I must say I think the last the most pleasing." "An opinion formed from experience, out of all question. And what of the storming parties?" "They may do for our younger men, Lundie," returned the quartermaster, rising and winking, a liberty that he often took with the commanding officer on the score of a long intimacy. "Every period of life has its necessities, and at 47 it's just as well to trust a little to the head. I wish you a very good even, Major Duncan, and freedom from gout, with a sweet and refreshing sleep." "The same to yourself, Mr. Muir, with many thanks. Remember the passage of arms for the morrow." The quartermaster withdrew, leaving Lundie in his library to reflect on what had just passed. Use had so accustomed Major Duncan to Lieutenant Muir and all his traits and humors, that the conduct of the latter did not strike the former with the same force as it will probably the reader. In truth, while all men act under one common law that is termed nature, the varieties in their dispositions, modes of judging, feelings, and selfishness are infinite. End of chapter.